Good evening and welcome to the Town of Raymond Budget Finance Committee meeting. Today is Wednesday, April 16th, and we're calling the meeting to order. And the first order of business is approval of the minutes from February 19, 2025. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Right? All in favor? This evening, the agenda is to discussion on the development of the 5-year plan. And with that, I have a document that was given to me, and I think it's a really good tool. It's called the Planning Implementation Tools Capital Improvement Plan, and it comes from the University of Wisconsin, Stevens Point, and the Center for Land Use Education. And I think this would be a very good tool for us to use to develop a capital improvement plan for the town of Raymond. It's all-encompassing. It's a little bit formal, which I think that we could use these parameters in putting together our capital improvement plan. I will just read some of the portions of it, and Sean will help me with the other part. So the tool description is a capital improvement plan is a community planning and fiscal management tool used to coordinate the location, timing, and financing of capital improvements over a multi-year period, usually 4 to 6 years. Capital improvements refer to major non-recurring physical expenditures such as land, buildings, public infrastructure, and equipment. The CIP includes a description of proposed capital improvement projects ranked by priority, a year-by-year schedule of expected project funding, and an estimate of project costs and financing sources. The CIP is a working document and should be reviewed and updated annually to reflect changing community needs, priorities, and funding opportunities. The common uses: annual capital budgeting. Preparation of the CIP and annual budget are closely linked. The first year of the CIP, known as the capital budget, outlines specific projects and appropriates funding for those projects. It is usually adopted in conjunction with the government's annual operating budget. Projects and financing sources outlined for subsequent years are not authorized until the annual budget for those years is legally adopted. The out years serve as a guide for future planning and are subject to further review and modification. Plan implementation. The CIP is a powerful tool for implementing a community's comprehensive plan, strategic plan, and other planning documents. Capital investments such as utility extensions, highway improvements, and the purchase of parkland or environmental corridors can have a substantial impact on patterns of growth and development. By providing funding for strategic investments at a given time and location, the CIP helps ensure that development occurs consistent with a community's plan and vision. Implementation. Creation. The following general steps are involved in preparing a capital improvement plan. 1 is the project submission. Local agencies and departments are asked to submit a list of capital improvements projects in order of priority. Project request forms may prompt the applicant to provide a project description and justification, an estimate of initial project costs, ongoing operating and maintenance costs, and recommended funding sources. 2, evaluation and selection. The CIP team reviews, prioritizes, and selects projects based on specific criteria such as desired service level standard, project demand as determined by an inventory of existing land, equipment, and facility conditions, number of residents or geographic area served, return on investment, cost savings, or revenue generation, sustainability or energy efficiency improvements, economic, environmental, aesthetic, or social impacts, public health, safety, or other legal concerns, consistency with community plans and policies, public or political support. 3, financial analysis. Financial data, including historic and projected local government revenues, expenditures, and debt service, are used to assess the community's ability to pay for proposed projects and to select appropriate financing tools. Plan preparation. The draft CIP includes a list of recommended projects by funding year, project, and scheduling details and financing sources. Detailed maps, photos, graphs, timelines, and other illustrations may accompany the plan. Review and adoption. Following public review and revisions, the governing body adopts the CIP and capital budget. Administration. A single official is usually responsible for coordinating preparation of the CIP. This task may be assigned to the chief executive or administrative officer, mayor, president, manager, administrator, a budget officer, or a member of the planning, finance, or public works departments. The CIP coordinator often works with an advisory committee, which may consist of local officials, citizens, or key department staff. It is also a good idea to refer the CIP to the Plan Commission for review and approval. In most communities, the CIP is prepared in the months preceding adoption of the annual government budget. To provide sufficient time for project solicitation, financial analysis, and community input, preparation of the CIP may take on a year-round function in some communities. The CIP should be reviewed and updated annually. Okay. I don't think I'm going to read through the report card part of it.
Madam
But-
Chair,
Yes.
could we have this put up on the website?
Yes, that's a great idea.
So that people can look at it?
Yes.
People are interested to see what we're working with?
One of the, and on the first page, in one of the boxes here, purposes of capital improvement planning.
I can read that for you if you want.
Okay,
Brick.
that'd be great. Thank you, Sean.
Purposes of capital improvement planning: ensure the timely repair and replacement of aging infrastructure. Provide a level of certainty for residents, businesses, and developers regarding the location and timing of public investments. Identify the most economical means of financing capital improvements. Provide an opportunity for public input in the budget and financing process. Eliminate unanticipated, poorly planned, or necessary capital expenditures. Eliminate sharp increases in tax rates, user fees, debt levels to cover unexpected capital improvements. Ensure the patterns of growth and development are consistent with the comprehensive plan. I'm sure if Peter was here, he would perk up there.
Right.
Balance desired public improvements with the community's financial resources. And then on the other page, the little box says, what is a capital improvement? Most communities define capital improvement as major public expenditures, usually physical in nature. Local policies may specify the cost and useful life of qualified projects. For example, a small community may set a minimum project cost of $1,000 or $2,500, while larger communities set the threshold at $10,000 or $25,000. Expenses below this level are considered operational and appear in the annual budget. The Government Finance Officers Association recommends a useful service life for at least 3 to 5 years. Common categories of capital expenditures include purchase of major equipment such as playgrounds equipment, snow plow, computers, acquisition of land for a public purpose, example, park, landfill, industrial site, construction, expansion, or major renovation of a public building or facility, library, road, sewage treatment, building retrofit for energy efficiency, and relating plans, engineer designs, appraisal, feasibility cost, example, LEED certification, architectural fees. Some communities specifically exclude vehicles and equipment from CIP. Some communities specifically exclude vehicles and equipment from CIP.
And on the very back page of this handout is an example of what would be a CIP request. I don't think we need to read through that. So today I took the time to put together a project request form that matches the information that is given in the example. And on here would be that it's a capital improvement program request, the project name, the project number, who the contact is, the department, the category, which would, useful life, and the priority. So each person submitting this would prioritize it for their department. Then there's a section for the description of what the project is, justification, operational impact, and then what a table that lists what the expenditures would be and for which topic and which years, and then the funding sources of where the funding would come from for the 5 years out and the total, and then it's all summed across and down below. So, does anyone have any thoughts about this tool or questions or concerns?
I'm wondering with the priority levels, I think that we should, if we do, they do adopt this, is just give an example of what priority levels are, because some people's priority level 1 might be different than someone's, like a priority level 3 or 4, just to give some examples.
So definitions for the priority levels, right? That's something that we
Yeah.
can work on,
And maybe even the categories, I don't know.
right?
But no, I think this is,
Category
Fantastic.
definitions. Category definitions.
I like that there's an example to use too, which is great.
Yes. Well, this was handed to me by Dennis some time ago, sometime last year, and I've been carrying it around, and now we have an opportunity. So I'm very grateful for Dennis for finding this document and sharing it with us. I think it's a really great tool.
And then we just had to find out who it would go to, correct, who that person is, because it says it usually is, well, obviously it wouldn't be the president, but mayor, president, manager, who the coordinator would be.
Well, the Budget Finance Committee is charged with developing the CIP plan, so I think that it would come back to the Budget Finance Committee. Is that what you think?
Yes.
It's specifically called out in the ordinance that we will develop and maintain the CIP plan.
Excellent.
Of course, we'll share that
Yes.
with the town manager.
Is that who the departments would give the information to, town manager, and the town manager would meet with us, or supply it to us?
Well, that's a good question.
Okay.
Probably, that would probably be the.
Right.
Like the contact.
Right, the town manager is over the department head, so they would funnel it to the town manager, and then we'd get it from the town manager.
Perfect.
That makes sense.
Great.
Okay, so department heads to town manager. And town manager to budget finance. Now, what are your thoughts about CIP requests that we already have in our budget plan for going out? In the sheets that were given to us as part of the budget finance and select board process this past year, some of the department heads had items listed for out years. And if we're going to use this tool and implement the plan, then I think that we would give this project request sheet to the town manager to give to the department heads, and then they would fill these out for their out-year CIP projects.
Out years starting when?
Well,
And my concern is, why do we need to, they've developed, at least some of them have already developed a 5-year plan. And it's just spinning people's wheels and using up valuable time to redo the project things, in my mind, the stuff that's already there.
yeah, I hear you there.
Nobody's got the time, nobody's got the manpower to do that.
Well, I hear you there, but if we're going to implement this tool, we need to start somewhere. And I think that the budget for, that we just did, 25, February of 20, it goes through 26, right?
Yeah.
Through
25,
June of
26.
26. So, for the 26, 27 budget is when these forms would have to be filled out,
Yep.
so that we can take them up in the budget cycle beginning in January. And I think that as an ongoing, if we are going to continue to meet every month, I think that this is a good opportunity for us to get these project sheets filled out by the department heads and back to us so that we can work on it every month, and it's not compressed into the 2 months of February and March. If we work on it all year long, then we'll be in a good place by the end of the year and be able to evaluate the CIP plan and incorporate that into the budget process instead of having it be a compressed exercise at budget time.
I fully agree with that. I'm just against having people, and I'll look at public safety, and they've got a real good plan. They've already done all the research, and why would they have to resubmit the same thing again? That's my point.
I understand, but if we're going to integrate all of the departments into one CIP plan, then we have to evaluate each department commingled together. And that way, if you have the request with all of the backup data behind it, then that gives you an equal playing field to evaluate all of the projects.
I think a lot what we've been missing is the backup data.
Yep.
And we did get some, we did get some really good stuff, but it was, this is something that's already in the works, whereas we'll have that backup data before. And I do understand what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
because I see some areas have done next to nothing, and some have done a good job. Technology, his is already laid out exactly where it's going. And public safety is. Castletop, I think, a little bit. But it's one of those, I'm just against people who have already done the work being forced to do it again.
Well, if they've already done the work and they already have the backup data, it's just a matter of filling out what the description is, the justification, and attaching all of that backup data to it.
Understand what you're saying, and what that talks about for number of hours and everything else for people to satisfy something they've already, if you will, satisfied, just for the purpose of having a file. That's my only thing.
Can we get Chris's opinion on it, maybe? Chris is, we don't have our finance director on, so Chris would be the next best in line for understanding what goes on at kind of town hall with the departments. Chris, what are your thoughts on kind of what Cliff and Karen are talking about?
Well, I think the public safety does have a good CIP program, and they have been following it. I think it's imperative that all the departments, if they have a CIP program, that they follow it. And I think what's happened in the past is sometimes, and I'm not picking on any department, but I think sometimes the CIP program has been used to fund unexpected purchases and things that get shuffled around from one CIP investment to another. I think it's imperative that if we have CIP programs in the future, which we're going to, that people follow them and they're not used in any other manner for what their proposed use is supposed to be. I think if you have capital improvements for vehicles or a certain purchase that, you're saving in the CIP program, that money should be used for that purpose, not to balance out somebody's budget. I think that's been done in the past, and I think it's imperative that if we have a CIP program, that we follow it. My department, for instance, code enforcement, I don't have any capital improvement projects. They're very small. I have software issues and different purchases, but my vehicles come under Public Works. He's always included our vehicles in his CIP program. Other departments, I don't know. I can't speak for them, and I don't know if they have any large purchases that they have, but obviously the town is interested always in purchasing properties or doing projects like sidewalks or road repair, or whatever it is. Those things, well, let me bring this one up. I think that one of the things in the future, if we're talking about this in our meetings in the future, that we should be looking at things that haven't been in the CIP, like the community center, and doing improvements to the school to use that resource once we get that in our possession after the RSU closes the middle school. So that said, I think that the biggest departments that have capital improvement programs are going to be Public Works and Public Safety. You're not going to see much out of my department. You're not going to see a lot of things out of other departments, maybe Tasseltop and the Parks and Rec. I can't speak to that, but it's a good conversation. I think that these forms are really relatively easy to fill out, and I don't think that's going to be a burden on any department. If Public Safety has already got a good CIP program, I think that they should continue with what they're doing. I agree with Cliff. They've had a good program. They just need to implement that. And if there's some responses they need to make to the committee, I think that's appropriate.
Yeah, I'm thinking, I understand what Cliff is saying, but I think they're not doing this today. Like, they don't have to do this right away. This is really, did you say January 26th, or are you saying more July 26th, that this is going to kind of start?
Well-
When would you want to see this form start being used?
I would like to see it start being used, when are we in, April? Well,
The next go-around of Budget Finance Committee for next year, or the following year.
right, but when do we want to see the department start filling this out and getting us the information for next year?
And again, I agree completely with the CIP program. That wasn't my point at all. But I would think as long as you're willing to take them in piecemeal, starting immediately and put
Yeah.
a deadline of September or October, I think that would probably be reasonable.
I think so.
Would it behoove us to invite the chief to come in and sit down with us at our next meeting and discuss this issue, to see how he feels about it and what he thinks he could do that would help
Sure.
us out, just so we have, his word as to what he thinks he can do or what would be an imposition?
Sure, I
I
think
think
we
we start
can
with the
invite-
two biggest ones, though. I think we work with Public Safety and Public Works.
Yes.
They're going to be, because from there, everything else should be, like Chris was saying, technology should be a pretty relatively easy one.
Parks and Rec is a pretty good size one that kind of reaches out in a dozen different directions too.
It's true.
I think whoever has a CIP plan, we should invite them to come to our next meeting. We'll have all the department heads here that have CIP and have a discussion with them.
Okay,
think
like I say,
that's
I'm
reasonable.
definitely for it. That's not what I.
Yeah, and they would
Oh,
learn
yeah.
from each
Of
other
course, I
too. It'd be
think-
like a
Right.
workshop
Absolutely.
almost to figure out
Well,
what
good.
this is going to be and how to do it.
Listen to their pros and cons
Sure.
of doing what they've done already to, put it on the sheet we need to have in order to develop our new plan.
Okay, so for the May meeting.
Because they may have things that they're like, could we add this? Could we take this out? Could we change this up a little bit?
Yeah. So what Cliff is saying, I don't think it's going to be a huge burden if they know about it far enough in advance. But I
Right.
understand what you're saying. Like, hey, most of the work has already been done, but to help us develop the plan, we kind of need to hear it and need to hear what their vision is for moving forward. Because I think that's important. Because I think like Chris said, there's a couple of things that kind of come up and we're like, it was already in the works. And now that because we only kind of started working on we only started meeting not even a year ago, full time, And I think we could probably catch up on a couple of things of some visions that aren't being spelled out in this directly.
I fully agree with you. You know, there's some, everybody, all the departments aren't doing a good job of projecting forward. And then when they have the money, it's, as somebody said, they're paying bills on a CIP money, that wasn't why CIP money was there.
So public safety, public works, rec, tech.
Where would the school fall under that? Because I mean, it would probably need its own
An-
thing, I would imagine, right?
The Jordan Small.
Yeah, because it's town building, but you know, are they all included under town building, or are they getting its own?
That's one, depending on which way it goes, it could very well under rec.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's
Being the
that's
prime- one of the prime users. I mean, I don't know where the line
It really
Yeah.
all depends what they put in there.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I think that with the school, that may be something that the town manager needs to address to the committee as to what he foresees for that building, because it's going to be a multi-purpose building, in my estimate. So the other thing I'd like to say is Cliff's recommendation that maybe we invite the departments to speak to us at the next meeting if they choose to, but give them kind of a deadline that we're going to need some kind of a capital improvement program from each department if they have one or want one by September, because that would give us time to evaluate and look at the CIP programs and make recommendations to the select board before it's time to do some voting on recommended warrant articles to the budget.
So we'd have a deadline of September for them to submit their project requests?
Right, I think that's kind of a rough timeline that I think would work for us. I mean, if we have the information, then we can digest that and make recommendations based on what they submit. But there's no reason that people that have a program already couldn't come to the next meeting and talk about it. And, you know, we can kind of give them some thoughts and advice. And by September, they can make any changes or amend their CIP programs according to what the discussions are in forthcoming meetings.
Okay, right, that sounds like a great idea. Sean?
And then just so there's on record, there's what I'm going to say is on record. This is not an overreach on budget finance. This was told to you by the former town manager. This is our responsibility. Is that correct?
It's an ordinance.
Yeah. So
We have an ordinance.
do we want to read? I can read it just so nobody feels that there's an overreach. This is just because it wasn't being done by budget finance doesn't mean that it wasn't always our responsibility to be doing that. So I'll just like to go on record.
The ordinance calls for it.
Okay, so if you have it, I'll read it.
I don't have a copy of the ordinance. It's in my other notebook.
All right. No
So
problem.
Sean, I think what you're saying is that's part of our charge, and I think I agree with you.
Yeah.
But even though it wasn't done in the past, we can do it going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, it's not an issue that it wasn't done. I just want to get on record that this is not an overreach on our committee. This is what is being tasked of us to do, and because we've been meeting every month, we're taking it by the horns.
Okay. Do we need to take a vote of the committee that we would like to use this tool as our model for putting together the CIP plan? I'm just asking.
I don't think you need a vote, but it probably should go in the minutes if this is gonna be the model we use, because we may change our minds once we get into this, or find something else
Okay.
that would be the only, I don't see, you know, this is conceptual, not definitive.
Okay.
It's our intent to use this until something better comes along.
Okay,
But it's more.
all right.
It's a living document.
It's a living document.
I personally don't think we need to vote on it. I think we just need to agree that this is the idea of how we're going to do it. It doesn't have to be so specific as to that's the exact form. It may morph into something else, but I don't think we need to vote on it.
Okay, thank you, appreciate that.
So I think moving forward, the thoughts are that we have Public Works, Public Safety, and potentially, you said rec come in, and then there was something specific about asking town manager about something, I forget what it was.
School
Jordan
usage.
Small.
Okay, so can we get that question out to him prior to next month's meeting? And there might not be a definitive answer on that because it's still so much up in the air, but just to give us an idea where that might fall might be a good idea of, who's,
Yeah, I think we can just put a column in as a placeholder for the
definitely.
Jordan Small School.
Yeah, because I do see it's going to be several departments in there potentially, so, so I'm good with
It could
that.
be a standalone.
I'd just like to add a little comment on that. I think that if we invite, not request, but invite the department heads to our meetings, if they have capital improvements, they're going to want to come because they're going to want us to support them. So I don't think this has to be kind of one of those issues that's a demand from us. It should be an invitation, and hopefully they receive that as, hey, this is my opportunity to come to the Budget Finance Committee and say what I need and implement that into the CIP program so it's in the next budget. It's in their best interest to comply with that request. It doesn't have to be any kind of forceful request. It's just an invitation.
Right, absolutely.
So, do we want to invite all the department heads? Is that kind of the divisions? And it might take a little while, but if we just discuss that, that's all we're discussing that night. It shouldn't be an issue. I don't think there's anything else.
That would be the right,
Yeah, that way.
this would be the proper way to do it.
Right, that way somebody's, if we're having a deadline in September,
But
you know,
nobody's nose would be on a joint or anything else, because they didn't get, even if they didn't have anything,
right.
it's just
Uh,
an open invitation.
Right, as a courtesy, invite everyone.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So library's not one of them that has a CIP, is that correct? Okay, so, beside rec and public works, public safety, tech, who else would be getting the invitation?
Everybody.
I think you'd send the invitation to everybody.
Okay, okay,
Because we may not know what their needs are. For instance, the finance department may need to change their software, and that could be an expensive situation. So, let them come to us and see what they say.
sounds good to me.
I
Okay,
think it's a great idea. We'll just invite everyone, all inclusive. Any other thoughts?
no, I'm about to look over this again, because it was a lot of reading, but I want to be, it hit on a couple of good things, which I thought was important. Especially the eliminate sharp increase in tax rates, user fees, and debt levels to cover unexpected capital improvements. I mean, there's a couple of things in here that the purpose of the CIP really is focused on not burdening the town with too much. And the only way you're going to do that is if you're looking several years into the future to understand what our costs might be. So I'm going to reread this document because I know we just read over it, but it's a lot to digest. But I think this is a good tool.
I think so. Were you all able to open the Excel spreadsheet? You didn't
Yes.
have any problems with it because Don had a problem opening it, so.
We had to play with it, but it would open.
Okay.
I had a
So you're
problem
up
with
to the
it.
top and clicked
You
on
did?
each one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Were you?
but I'm at home working on a tablet. If I'm at the office, it may come up on my computer fine. So it's no big deal. I'll get it tomorrow.
That first page is blank, just
Right.
first page is blank, and then you go down to the tabs, and that's where the rest of it is.
Right, and,
Oh, maybe that was the problem. I looked at the blank page
oh,
and said, oh, there's nothing there.
There's nothing here.
So I
That's-
didn't search any
It's
further.
scot-free.
right, that's the first page. And what my intention with that is be able to link cells on the individual sheets behind it and have them appear on that sheet all together as a summary. And it takes a special skill with Excel to be able to do that. And I haven't had time available to set that all up, but I thought it was important to get all of the sheets that we were provided electronically through the last budget season all into one document. And then we can get the summaries from each department, and then we'll have a really pretty clear idea of what we're looking at for totals in the years going forward.
Absolutely.
And we have a lot coming down the pike, and I think we need to be prepared for that and be able to have a snapshot view of what those costs are. And if I can make it work, I would also like to put the revenue carried forward for each department CIP, if so, and set the summary sheet up exactly like this, so all the numbers will line up. I think is a good idea. This is a really good sheet. I think this will be very helpful, so we can see what we have in reserve and what the expected expenses are going to be, and then we'll know where our deficit is.
Yep.
But like I said, it's a work in progress.
Madam Chair, this is current as of, well, it says as of 5/28/24, but that's
Oh.
not right. These numbers are all good? And the reason I'm asking is because there was some confusion the other night on what they'd moved and what they hadn't moved and
Right.
everything else. That's why I'm asking the question.
Well, I did not ask for this sheet, and Melanie, did you provide this sheet?
What sheet are you referring to?
The Capital Improvement Reserve Fund sheet?
Are you talking about the large
Yes.
page? So I printed out a page and from the worksheet that you sent to the large email group.
Okay. What's confusing to us is in the footer, it says as of 5/28/24. And I'm just wondering if the date is wrong, and if the numbers are accurate.
I have not done anything to change. All I did was print out that tab that opened up in the document that you sent to the
Okay.
group earlier.
I will go back and I will verify that these numbers are correct as of what we approved for the budget to go on the warrant articles.
Okay, because I know the 135 was definitely projects that had died or were left over from project. But
Okay,
everything beyond that kind of got a little fuzzy-wuzzy and went 3 or 4 different ways.
We
okay,
probably need to update it.
yep, I'll go back and verify these numbers,
All right.
make sure they're correct.
And if you maybe put a note on it that if these numbers are right, how much of the because the carryover is gonna go way down because they're diverting part of that to hold the taxes down.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I have, some just popped in my head. I do know that we were talking about public works and we were talking about public safety, having the majority of the CIP programs that have been implemented in the past. I do know that assessing had a CIP program, and there's some funds left that should be carried forward. I'm not sure why the assessor had that in there, but I know there's a good chunk of change in his CIP program, so that would be another department that could come forward with, some information to help us out.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm kind of curious what the town hall feasibility study was. I know it's a very small amount that's left over, but that was prior, I mean, that was 21, 22, so there was some kind of study that was going on for town hall. I don't know what that was about, but just kind of curious. Chris, do you have an idea what the town hall feasibility study was?
I think back when it was done in 21, 22, they were wondering whether or not they needed to develop a new town hall.
Yeah, I remember
I think it
that.
was looking at whether or not we needed to have a new town hall.
Do you know what the results of that study were?
You can see it. We don't have one.
Sorry, Sean, I stepped away. Could you repeat your question?
Yeah, I was just curious, the town hall feasibility study, it's a very small amount that's being carried over, but I was just kind of curious if you had any insight on what that was, and Frank kind of filled us in a little bit, that a study was done, and what would you say came out of it, Frank?
Well, we didn't get a new town hall, so I guess what came out of the study is we didn't need one at that time.
I have no knowledge of a feasibility study on town hall. That doesn't mean there wasn't one. Do you know, Frank, when that was?
I'm not sure, but I think it was back in 2000. Dawn would know better than I. But I think there was they were looking at what they needed to do, and then I think what they did is they renovated in town hall instead of looking at building something new.
Right.
I think that's when a lot of those renovations down there took place.
Yeah, I really don't know much about that.
Just interesting, that.
My understanding is that that building is very, very old.
Old
And
school.
there are some major repairs that, if it's going to stay the town hall, that need to be done. So. it's
I
gonna-
do know about that.
Yeah.
The building, it's an 1803 building with a addition to it that was a portable schoolroom, the oldest one in town, or oldest one in the state, actually. So definitely that building needs to either be totally renovated, buy a new building, or move the town office up to the new school up to the Jordan Small School when we get it back.
People are amazed because we have a picture of it when it was a school hung up in the Historical Society's museum. And I ask people if they know or have ever been in this school, and the vast majority of the people from Raymond say, nope, never set foot in that school. I said, well, I think you did last time you paid your taxes.
It's got a stained glass window, doesn't it?
No, that was not true. A number of years ago, they did a complete remodel of the roof, and they knew there was a window in there. And the rumor was that it was a stained glass window. But when they did the renovations, they took the window out. And it's a unique window, and that hangs over the picture in the Historical Museum. Come up and see it, folks. The selectmen lent it to us. So we have it on loan from the town of Raymond.
Excellent. Cool.
They might need it sometime to put somewhere.
In the new town hall.
In the new town hall. It's a very nice window.
Okay.
Cool.
All right.
Well, that $200 go a long way for the,
That's right.
thank goodness it was being carried over all these years.
Oh. So do we have any more discussion on the foundation for our CIP plan, our tool? If not, then I'll open it up to public comment. Okay, I don't see any. Budget Finance Committee comment? Frank?
I would say that if Town Hall is moved someday, I'd like to see that, all of the newer stuff removed and bring that back to the schoolhouse that it was. There are very, very few historic buildings in the town of Raymond. That would be a great historic building if we could just bring it back to what it was when it was the original schoolhouse. We had a lot of schoolhouses in Raymond. There's a couple that are now homes, but
Yep.
all of them have disappeared.
Yeah, along with that, I know there's a couple of visioning committees going on right now. But I think, they'll probably be looking more into this, but the idea isn't to sell our buildings. That's something the vision committees will kind of look at, but if we can retain our buildings, I think we should, as opposed to just selling them off, but we'll let those committees kind of look at that as well.
There's an inherent need here in Raymond for lots of services, and I think we should take advantage of what we have. That's my opinion. My thoughts? Anyone else? Okay. Anyone on Zoom, any comments? Chris?
I'm good.
Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Okay. Adjourned.